So today we are going to speak about how close are we to the return of the Messiah or the return of Jesus. So today I want to focus on we know who Daniel is, right? In the Bible, he wrote the book of Daniel, and basically Daniel chapter 2 is a prophetic word that predicts 2,500 years of history from our time, okay? So basically, 2,500 years in the future for him when he was writing it, but he didn't know that it would be 2,500 years from that date. Alright, so first I want to tell you that Daniel wrote this in the 6th century or around 600 BC. If you've read the story of Daniel, you know that in this story, King Nebuchadnezzar conquered Judah, which was a prime city of Israel, and he took prisoners, Daniel among them. And what's amazing about this story is that God always uses evil for good. For in this instance, uh, King Nebuchadnezzar was basically destroying God's people, because they were being disobedient. So I don't know if you noticed, but he uses Satan to bring out the best of us, as the word says we are kings and priests and are meant to rule. So we have to develop that character that one day will be ruling. That's what the Bible has promised us. Okay, so during that time in Babylon, actually Babylon was the world dominant nation or the empire of that time. So King Nebuchadnezzar had a dream that terrified him. He then called his magicians over, his sorcerers, wise men to come interpret this dream. So nobody could interpret this dream, okay? He would threaten them. He told them that if they could not interpret their dream, they would die. He told them that their houses would be turned into public toilets. So it's realistically, it's like Trump threatening a huge mansion owner, of like 10 or 15 bedrooms from Beverly Hills. And if they don't guess his dream, they will be public toilets. Imagine that. So back in the day, it was, I guess, times were just different. But that's exactly what happened. Now, when Daniel got word of this, he went and interpleaded with the king, because Daniel was actually one of the wise men as well. He was somebody that was a captive and was educated in the Babylonic way. So they had like a title or, a high position within the kingdom. So when Daniel heard of this, he requested the king give him one night so he can pray to God. And God, answered Daniel's prayers. And he revealed the dream through the night. So the next day came, and that's when Daniel went and presented himself with the king, and he actually interprets the dream. So I'm going to read some Bible here. So we're going to start at Daniel chapter 2, verse 27. So Daniel replied, "There are no wise men, enchanters, magicians, or fortune tellers who can reveal the king's secrets." And this is a wise response that Daniel is giving to the king, because he's giving all the credit to God, and he's the only one that's worthy of all the credit and glory. So, that's a very wise response. Now, let's continue on. Daniel chapter 2, verse 31. This is the vision. So, 31. In your vision, your majesty, you saw standing before you a huge shining statue of a man. It was a frightening sight. 32. The head of the statue was made of fine gold, its chest and arms were silver, its belly and thighs were bronze. 33. Its legs were iron, and its feet were a combination of iron and baked clay. 34. As you watched, a rock was cut from a mountain and not by human hands, it struck the feet of iron and clay, smashing them to bits. 35. The whole statue was crushed into small pieces of iron, clay, bronze, silver, and gold. Then the wind blew them away without a trace, like a chaff on a threshing floor. But the rock that knocked the statue down became a great mountain that covered the whole earth. Now that was the dream, okay? Now we're going to move on to the interpretation. So the interpretation starts in Daniel chapter 2, verse 38. So he has made you the ruler over all the inhabited world and has put even the wild animals and birds under your control. You are the head of gold. So he's telling this to King Nebuchadnezzar. The head of gold is the Babylon Empire. And just the fact, they ruled the earth from 606 BC to 539 BC. No kingdom ever compared, even had, hanging gardens, which was a wonder of the world. At the time, they had this huge wall that somebody tried to recreate over there. I think it was Osama bin Laden, but they couldn't get the measurements, and it was just the resources for it was ridiculous. That wall was huge. It was another wonder of the world. All right, Daniel chapter 2, verse 39. All right, so, but after your kingdom comes to an end, another kingdom inferior to yours will rise to take your place. So that kingdom is the chest made of silver of this statue. Represents the Persian Empire conquered Babylon by Cyrus the Great, and Persians ruled from 539 BC to 331 BC. Now, I don't know if you keep up with Israel or not, but you know that they're starting to collect funds to build Solomon's temple. And on one side, they have the picture of Cyrus the Great, which he was the Persian king because he freed Israel from captivity from Babylon. Okay? And on the other side, they have Trump because Trump moved the embassy to Jerusalem. So, that they classified him as a hero with that. All right, so the rest of the verse in chapter 2, verse 89, it says, after that kingdom has fallen, yet a third kingdom represented by bronze will rise to rule the world. Okay? Now the bronze represents the stomach and the thighs. So they conquered the known world. It was by Alexander the Great. It was the Greek Empire. And it was during 331 BC through 168 BC that they had complete control. Now, Daniel chapter 8, verse 21 lets us know the shaggy male goat represents the kings of Greece, and the large horn between his eyes represents the first king of the Greek Empire. This is not coincidence. There is no coincidence for God, okay? You guys have to understand that the Bible has more than 2,000 prophecies in it. So, the Bible is basically the only proven book that has prophecies that have been prophesied and have came true. Now, these are prophecies that were given to Daniel 2,500 years ago, okay? And they happened throughout time, and they're still happening now. Now, let me just give you more on that fact, okay? Okay, so Daniel chapter 2, verse 40. Okay, so following that kingdom, there will be a fourth one as strong as iron. That kingdom will smash and crush all previous empires, just as iron smashes and crushes everything it strikes. Okay, so the iron legs is representing the Roman Empire, which was ruled between 168 BC through 476 AD. So they actually ruled during the life of Christ. And how do we know that this was actually the Roman Empire? So Daniel chapter 2, verse 22 tells us the four prominent horns that replaced that one large horn show that the Greek Empire will break into four kingdoms, but none as great as the first. So, at a point during the Roman Empire, when they were emperors, there was this Roman emperor. His name was Diocletian. He divided Rome into four regions, okay? And Rome was ruled under a tetrarchy, or otherwise known as the rule of four. Okay, so this happened between 284 AD to 305 AD, somewhere around that time. That's when this rule of four was established, okay? In other words, as it says in verse 22, the four horns. Okay, so it was the four regions. All right, so Daniel chapter 2, verse 41 through 43. The feet and toes you saw were a combination of iron and baked clay, showing that the kingdom will be divided. Like iron mixed with clay, it will have some of the strength of iron, but while some parts of it will be as strong as iron, other parts will be as weak as clay. This mixture of iron and clay also shows that these kingdoms will try to strengthen themselves by forming alliances with each other through intermarriage, but they will not hold together just as iron and clay does not mix. Okay, so the feet of iron and clay represent the nations now around the world as the Roman Empire was conquered by different small nations. Some are strong as iron and many as weak as the clay. So the alliances they make is the Soviet Union did not last as iron and clay do not mix. The United Nations now is sort of dissolving, especially with Trump attacking with the tariffs and all this tax stuff. There's mixture, but it's still strong. But at the same time, there's always bumping heads. Okay. Interesting enough, the Bible is true as it says. Okay, no other empire will rise after these empires mentioned in the book of Daniel. As Charlemagne, he tried to unite Europe, but he failed. Napoleon tried and failed. Hitler tried to unite Europe, and he failed. Okay, so throughout history, the word is proving more and more real. Okay, so God showed King Nebuchadnezzar the entire future of what would happen, okay? And we're not done. We're still in this prophecy. Okay, that's something that's interesting enough and it's big. Okay, guys, we're living in prophecy. We're living in history. We're making history. One day we'll look back, when you're in heaven. Imagine this because it's real. We'll be in heaven and we'll look back and we'll say, wow, I lived in history back there. All right. So, Daniel chapter 2, verse 44. During the reigns of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed or conquered. It will crush all these kingdoms until nothingness, and it will stand forever. Okay, so the rock cut from the mountain, that rock that was cut, represents the return of Jesus. Okay, and we are in the last days. And, we don't know whether Jesus can rapture us tonight, tomorrow, or, in a couple years. We don't really know. The Bible says we will know the seasons, but we don't know the date or time. But how close are we really? That's a very interesting point, and let's explore it a little more. All right, so how many of us know what is a parable? So a parable is sort of a metaphor. So it's like a low-key story. So Jesus used a parable when he would talk to his multitudes, but he would reveal them later on to his disciples. So here's a good parable of wheat. So Matthew chapter 13, verse 24 to 30. Matthew 13, 24 to 30, in case you missed it. All right, so parable of the wheat and weeds. All right, so here's another story that Jesus told. The kingdom of heaven is like a farmer who planted good seeds in his field. But that night, as the workers slept, his enemy came and planted weeds among the wheat, then slipped away. When the crop began to grow and produce grain, the weeds also grew. The farmer's workers went to him and said, "Sir, the field where you planted the good seed is full of weeds. Where did they come from?" "An enemy has done this," the farmer exclaimed. "Should we pull the weeds?" the workers asked. "No," he replied. "You'll uproot the wheat if you do. So let both grow together until the harvest. Then I will tell the harvesters to sort out the weeds, tie them into the bundles, and burn them, and to put the wheat in the barn." So Jesus later explains the wheat, the parable of wheat. You can read that in Matthew chapter 13, verse 36 to 43. So then, leaving the crowd outside, Jesus went into the house. His disciples said, "Please explain to us the story of the weeds in the field." Jesus replied, "The Son of Man is a farmer who plants the good seed. The field is the world, and the good seed represent the people of the kingdom. The weeds are the people who belong to the evil one. The enemy who planted the weeds amongst the wheat is the devil. The harvest is the end of the world, and the harvesters are the angels. Just as the weeds are sorted out and burned in the fire, so it will be at the end of the world. The Son of Man will send angels, and they will remove from his kingdom everything that causes sin and all who do evil. And the angels will throw them into the fiery furnace, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in their Father's kingdom. Anyone with ears to hear should listen and understand." Now bear with me, I have another parable coming to you. But first, let me explain. So after Jesus resurrected from the dead, he did meet with his disciples. And he did tell them this. "These are the words which I speak unto you while I was yet with you, that all things must be fulfilled, which were written in the law of Moses and in prophets and in the Psalms concerning me. Then open he their understanding, and they might understand the scriptures." And that's actually Luke chapter 24, verse 44 to 45. So, did you notice that in that verse, Jesus confirmed there were prophecies in the book of Psalms concerning his first coming? Well, make no mistake, there are other prophecies in Psalms unfulfilled concerning his second coming, and I'm going to tell you about that very shortly. So let's get into the parable of the fig tree. So speaking with his disciples about when his second coming would take place, Jesus said in Matthew 24, verse 32 through 34, "Now learn a parable of a fig tree. When its branches is yet tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So likewise you, when you shall see all these things, know that it is near, even at the door. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass away till all these things have been fulfilled." This is a very important verse, so write it down. Matthew 24, verse 32 through 34. So what is this about? What generation shall not pass away before Jesus' return? So the answer is in Jesus' parable. It's the generation that sees the fig tree put forth its leaves. Listen, in a parable, things always represent other things. Like in Jesus' parable of the sower, the seed represented the word of God. And in his parable of the tares represented the children of the wicked one in Matthew 13:38. So what does the fig tree represent? It's the nation of Israel. They're over there. How do we know this? The Bible clearly tells us. Hosea chapter 9, verse 10. "I, which is God, found Israel like grapes in the wilderness. I saw your fathers as the first fruit of the fig tree." It's Israel. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. It's them. It's Israel. All right, so subsequently, Jesus was saying in his parable of the fig tree, and this is me paraphrasing, So the generation of people that is born on earth the same year the nation of Israel comes back on the map again will not all pass away or die before my second coming occurs. What's even more amazing about this parable is the fact that when Jesus uttered it, Israel was still a nation of people. Okay? They were just under the Roman control. In other words, through this parable, Jesus was also prophesying the destruction of the nation of Israel. And sure enough, in 70 AD, that happened. So when did the nation of Israel stunningly and amazingly come back on the map again? Okay, so that's in 1948 AD or 1948. This is when President Truman signed a bill and recognized Israel as a nation. 1948. Okay? Okay, so the length of a fig tree generation. Okay, so what we all need to know now is the length in years of a generation of people, and then we can say add that to 1948 for Jesus Christ's second coming to occur. Okay, so well, remember me saying that there's still prophecies in Psalms yet to be fulfilled concerning Christ's second coming? All right, well, here's that verse, okay? So let's go to Psalms chapter 90, verse 10. So let me read it for you. It says, "The days of our lives are 70 years, and if by reason of strength they are 80 years, yet is their strength labor and sorrow, for it is soon cut off and we fly away." Psalms 90:10. This verse is clearly letting us know 80 years is the longest average age of a generation of people. Okay, so therefore, the outside date for Christ's return should be 1948, the year that Israel became a nation, plus 80 years equals after death 228. 2028. So it'll be 2028. It'll be 10 years from now, which we're in 2018 right now. So what's even more fantastic is Moses wrote Psalms 90 over 3,000 years ago, and he lived to be 120 years old. But today, 80 years is almost perfectly the average life expectancy of humans being worldwide. And you know what's crazy is Moses was 120 when he wrote that, okay, saying 80 will be the life expectancy during that time. Wow, so it's amazing to me. Now, in Psalms 90:10, did you notice towards the end it said soon cut off and we fly away words in Psalms 90:10? So, after the 80 years generation, doesn't the Bible tell us the Antichrist's time will be cut short, him having only 42 months? And won't the remaining righteous remnant of saints fly away up in the air during Christ's return to escape the global firestorm of God's wrath? So that's letting us know the rapture. The words in Psalms are almostly certainly prophesying of the flying away. That will happen to the saints elect at the very end of the Antichrist's soon cut off Great Tribulation reign. So it's 80 years after 1948, which is 2028, 10 years from today. So there you have it, Christ's parable of the fig tree in Matthew 24, verse 32 to 35. And Moses' length of generations in Psalms 90, verse 10 go hand in hand in confirming Jesus Christ's rapture, his return, immediately after the Great Tribulation. That's when that's going to happen, after, in 2028. Now, don't get me wrong, nobody knows the date or time, but let's go ahead and read one more verse, one more chapter in the Bible. It's Matthew 24, verse 36 through 44. However, no one knows the day or hour when these things will happen, not even the angels in heaven or the Son himself. Only the Father knows. When the Son of Man returns, it will be like it was in Noah's day. In those days before the flood, the people were enjoying banquets and parties and wedding rites upon to the bedtime Noah entered his boat. People didn't realize that was going to happen until the flood came and swept them all away. This is the way it will be when the Son of Man comes. 2 men will be working together in the field. One will be taken, the other left. 2 women will be grinding flour at the mill. One will be taken, the other will be left. So you too must keep watch, for you do not know what day our Lord is coming. Understand this: if a homeowner knew exactly when a burglar was coming, he would keep watch and not permit his house to be broken into. You also must be ready at all times, for the Son of Man will come when you least expect it. Okay, so this is not a definite date. We know that a generation could be, some people live to be 120, sometimes older. So maybe somebody born in 1948 can live to be 200 years for all we know. You never know. The word says, honor your mother and your father, and long life shall be given to you. So, anything is possible. But just know that Jesus is Christ. His return is imminent, okay? He's coming very soon. It can happen today. Be ready. If you don't know Christ, I commend you to get to know Christ. Example I always put is, you lose your house, you go to this mansion, you knock on their door and you tell them, I'm going to live with you now. They'll close the door on you. They say, I never knew you. It's the same with God. If you lose your life here and you try to go into heaven and you never knew Jesus here, he'll close heaven's gates on you. Get to know Jesus. It's about a relationship. It's not about a religion. Okay, just say a prayer. Read the Bible, Romans 10, verse 9 through 10. It says that only by confessing through your mouth that you are made right and is believing in your heart that you are made right with God. You have to confess that Jesus Christ is your Lord and your Savior, and you have to believe it so you're saved, okay? Thank you guys for stopping by, and God bless. Take care, everyone.